Hair loss affects millions of men from around the world. Some guys fall into depression, they develop anxiety, whereas other men can have successful careers and lives whilst being bald. Just think of some of your favourite Hollywood A-listers. In this documentary, we're going to look into all aspects of hair loss and hair loss cures. We're going to look at a potential conspiracy side of things. We're going to look at the research that's currently being done out there. We're going to look at what you can currently do that's already available on the market. And we're going to ask the question, is a bald cure even needed, or should men just embrace being bald? So I decided to sit down and chat with various people to discuss a few options, whether that's treatments, a potential cure, and of course the stigma that surrounds hair loss.
Everything I had planned for myself as a I think I was 25 at this point, right? Everything I'd been working towards. I had dreams of acting. I just started dating this, really attractive woman. We were a few months into our relationship. And, like I said, really enjoying my studies. Everything was great. And just like that, I thought, it's done. Literally over. Who's going to hire a bold ass, old ass looking grandpa guy at like 25 years old, right? My girlfriend, she's going to dump me. People are going to start. I'm a joke. I felt like a joke. And it's weird. It changed. Like when I was looking in the mirror, the perception of, like my entire perception of myself changed when I had the knowledge that I was going to go bald.
I think for men, one of the biggest insecurities is their hair, actually. So men can get lines, they can get scars, and they don't really mind too much, but as soon as the hair goes, it's a huge thing for them. So I think it will always be sort of an insecurity, and it starts from very young. It can start from when you're in your teens all the way up until reach late 70s as well.
Step 1, you find out you're losing your hair and everything changes. Step 2, because of all those fears, like I said, like I'm going to look so old, I'm going to look so awful, like people are going to laugh at me, ridicule me. That's like step 2, right? All those fears come in. Now step 3, you look for things that can save you from that. So for a lot of people, it's like change the hairstyle. A lot of people, it's ways to cover it, right? Ways to cover it up. And that includes every aspect, whether it's medication, the way I see it, medication, hats, changing the styles, even down to like avoiding situations or people that stop going swimming or they don't go out in the wind, the sprays, everything. Being super obsessive, like having it shaved to the bone to try to make it like the illusion that you're not losing your hair. It's all to cover it up, right? Because you want to feel safe from all of these things that you're afraid of happening.
I believe like the stigma around men losing their hair back in the day was acceptable. It was just normal. You lost your hair, but you carried on, you went to work, no issues. But today we live in a society where both women can enhance their looks and men are more aware of what's available to them. So there's nothing wrong with a man going for a massage day, a spa day. It's accepted. Media prompts you to do this, to feel good. Mental health is on the rise. So if you're getting a treatment or you're adapting the way you look and it's going to make you feel good, it's acceptable. It's absolutely fine. It's a norm.
It's more of an equal society in terms of men and women in terms of sort of pay. I think men used to be able to rely on that to kind of attract a mate, but now because women are more independent, in terms of what they can kind of achieve and bring home financially, we're having to now up our game. And that's why I think the sort of aesthetics has come in, because men are now having to kind of stand out from everyone else a bit more. So I think that's possibly one of the reasons why it's a bit more, popular at the moment as well.
If you think about it, there's nothing physically painful about losing your hair. It doesn't make you, it doesn't cause you any physical pain. It doesn't hurt to have your hair fall out. It doesn't threaten your life in a physical sense, right? What it is, the pain that you feel is the hit to your ego. It's the hit to your self-esteem, your ego, and that is all psychological. And I really think, just if I was to put this all in a nutshell, if you really want to truly deal with the problem of hair loss, you have to deal with the psychology of it. You have to deal with the hit to your ego, like I described it. And once you can do that, when you can deal with it from that perspective, it's not an issue anymore. If you want to enhance the way you look or, you know, try to improve it, then go for it. But you'll be doing it from such a different point. You'll be doing it from such a different space, not because you are so afraid, like you have to use this physical thing to you know, give you confidence or to save, like I said, save your ego. It's so much more positive that way, I think. You know, you're doing it as an addition, not a savior. I honestly think the sooner you can do it, the more success you'll have in dealing with hair loss. I know there's other people that can do the same thing. They just don't know it yet. They're just in that space where they are desperate, they're depressed, you know, let's be real. They're hopeless. They feel exactly like I did. But just with I just hope that with what I do, they can just at least entertain the idea that there is a genuine way out of this, and they actually can accept it. It can be a part of them. They will never need to feel embarrassed about it. And not only can they get over it, like they will actually benefit from it, from this hardship in the long run.
So 2 years ago, I got something called SMP, which is like a head tattoo for your scalp. This was in order to combat my own hair loss, which I started suffering from around about 21 years old. Personally, I was quite happy being bald, but it's undeniable the SMP has made me look better, younger, and framed my face in a certain way that being bald couldn't. I was able to create natural confidence from being bald for a sustained period of time, and I would happily go back to being bald if that was the only option I had. As somebody who's had positive results from getting SMP, I want to dig deeper into all the different treatments that men can get and see what things can help them.
Scalp micropigmentation is a non-invasive medical graded tattoo where we penetrate the first layer of the skin of the scalp, creating an illusion of hair follicles across the scalp. SMP, as it's known widely around the world, is available to both men and women who may suffer with hair loss. So the hair loss could be caused by alopecia, it could be caused by natural hair loss, or trauma to the scalp, such as somebody being involved in an accident and having scars and stitches at the end of it. So the variety of solutions for this hair loss, SMP can be covering all of them. I believe the one main reason for having SMP done, and from my personal experience, is confidence and having the option to change my appearance. Hair loss, again, it's a huge factor that plays into every man's life, whether they admit it or they don't admit it. You do not like not having hair. So it's very important that, you know, you've got an option there. You know, the solution's right there. SMP's right there. Instant results, you know, within a course of 3 weeks, you're a totally different person.
So you probably know of a few people who have had hair transplants. It's something we see a lot with celebrities and footballers. But I wanted to see how exactly it works and to see if it's a viable option for many men out there.
So what I specialize in is something called FUE, which is follicular unit extraction. So it's a particular type of hair transplantation where we take individual hair follicles from the back of someone's head and we transplant it into the area that needs the grafts transplanted to. It's newer than the older technique, which is FUT. So FUT is also known as the strip technique, where you take a strip of skin out, but this is we take individual hair follicles out. It's become a lot more popular in terms of, you know, in general. I think it's because you see a lot of celebrities like sports players. Wayne Rooney is a good example. So he's kind of made it less taboo to have things like a hair transplantation, and you'll also see you know, people on TikTok, you know, you'll see celebrities kind of documenting their whole sort of journey. So I think in general, the sort of idea towards aesthetic medicine has become a lot less sort of taboo. It's also a lot more accessible as well. So you've got lots of clinics now who specialize in FUE, and there's lots of different price brackets as well for FUE. So people are able to kind of get the information they need, and also the internet as well. There's a lot of information on the internet, so people will research it. They'll look at different clinics, they'll look at different ideas, and then, you know, they'll decide possibly to go down the sort of a hair transplantation route. I think if people could get hair transplants without issues, I think most people would, and it may become, as you say, sort of more of a normal thing actually having a hair transplant, but there are still issues that mean people can't have it done. So donor area, for instance. Have you got enough donor area? How far have you progressed? What's your family history like? So there are people who are not suitable for hair transplants, but once we get to a stage where we can clone hair, then that's when you can essentially offer it to everyone, so everyone then becomes a candidate. But until we get to that stage, we are still limited by those who are suitable and those who are not suitable. But we've got to a point now where we've refined it so far that we're taking individual follicles out, and there's not much further you can go past that point. The only bit past that point would be taking stem cells, or using sort of stem cells to try and regrow hair. So we've refined it to a point where we can't go much further apart from actual individual parts of cells. So I think that'll be the next big thing, will be something like stem cells, will be cloning of hair as well. Unless there's some sort of magic cure that someone will come up with, which I don't think there will be very soon. But yeah, stem cells will be the next big thing, I think.
Are we any closer to having a treatment which guarantees men from losing their hair? Or maybe it's simply not possible and we're being strung along? In your opinion, why do you think there hasn't been a hair loss cure yet? Is there a conspiracy aspect to it, or is it something else?
So there would be maybe like three main reasons why it hasn't happened yet. First, it will be the complexity of hair loss. Hair loss can result from genetic factors, hormonal imbalances, autoimmune disorders, aging, and so on. So developing a single one-size-fits-all solution that addresses all the underlying issues is pretty difficult. And there are like new pathways of treating hair loss that are still being discovered every year. So it's always like more and more that we still learn about it. The second reason why it hasn't been done yet is because low urgency. The pharmaceutical and cosmetic industries often prioritize conditions that affect a larger percentage of the population. And while hair loss can be distressing for individuals, it may not be considered as high of a priority than, compared to cancer, for example. So that would be the second thing. And the third thing will be like, they want to have like a promise for long-term profitability. So companies that are developing hair loss treatments, they need to invest significant resources in the research, development, clinical trials, and regulatory approval. And the best way to do it is to create a less expensive treatment that anybody can use, and they can afford it on a monthly basis, like a subscription product. And then, compared to creating a cure that maybe just 10% of population will be able to afford it, and the rest will not even consider it. So, and let's not forget the whole pharma industry operates by creating drugs that hide the symptoms, but are not designed to treat the root cause. So if you look at the high blood pressure drugs, look at diabetes drugs, weight loss drugs, fat burning drugs, antidepressants, like why there are 20,000 plus different prescription drugs available in the US as of now, but people are still sick, people are still unhealthy despite taking these miracle things. And then you kind of ask yourself, why it should be any different with hair loss treatments in the long run.
So if a hair loss cure does come about in the future, where do you think is most likely to come from?
So first you need to ask yourself, like, what type of treatment that should be that would actually target the cure for male pattern baldness, which is, it's because of the gene. It's like androgen receptor gene that is a key player in male pattern baldness. It's located on the X chromosome, and it regulates the sensitivity of all of your androgen receptors in the scalp, in your whole body, but also in the scalp, mainly in the scalp if you talk about androgenetic alopecia. And if these receptors are made super sensitive, you go bald. If they are not, you keep the hair. So if there will be a gene-based therapy that can alter this gene in a way that it will be able to downregulate the androgen receptor sensitivity in the scalp, then we will likely have a cure. Now, there is a product developed by a Chinese company, Kintor. It's called GT229, that will actually act as a topical androgen receptor degrader when you apply it to the scalp. It is still in the research phase, but promising, since the trial 1 has been already completed on humans, and they're about to do a second trial this year. Now, that's one of the treatments. There are several other ones that are on my watch list. For example, in Japan is interesting because Japan has a fast track approval pathway for regenerative medicines, including hair follicle regeneration. That means that if you have a treatment that regenerates hair, in this case, you only need one study, one good trial to show that it has good results, and then you can file for approval. So it can actually be commercialized pretty quickly compared to US, UK, or other parts of the world.
The stuff that's out there now, in my opinion, it's just too much of a perfect business opportunity to give up, you know? Especially, well, finasteride and minoxidil, right? So, okay, you use this and it can sort of halt the balding process, right? It can sort of keep it there as a best case scenario, really. Obviously, there's different people, right? Some people will say, I regrew some people will say, like, it just kept it the same, whatever, right? But you then, if you've started to use that from your already insecure position, you're so afraid of losing your hair, now you're using this stuff, they know that if they stop, it's not only back to square one, but they're going to be worse than when they've started, especially if you're going years down the line now. So all that fear is still there, you know, and if not, has grown, because there are stories, of course, like it can suddenly stop working, or it becomes less effective, or you've got to up the dosage, or all of these sorts of things, right? There's always that question mark around it, right? It keeps you checking for progress, right? You're thinking, is it getting better, right? So every time you check in, it's in your head, you're monitoring it. So I think that's a good word, you're always going to be monitoring it. It always keeps it in your life. So I think that is a bad thing psychologically. But from a business perspective, I mean, how fantastic is it to have people that are hooked on the thing that you're providing, the thing that you're selling them from, because they know if they stop, it's game over. I just think, everyone's got to get real, got to get real with the fact that a huge percentage of guys lose their hair. And honestly, I would love it to be a thing where it's almost just like a rite of passage for a guy. When they're growing up, they're like, oh, you're not losing your hair. Like, oh, fair enough. Like, I obviously am, because a ton of guys do. You know, I'd love to see it at a place like that at some point. Will we ever get there? I don't know. There's probably too much money to be made keeping people insecure with these cures, or whatever you want to call them.
Okay, guys, quite a strange one for a documentary. I can't imagine you'd assume that you would have saw me sat in my traditional YouTube setup. But I needed to make a video like this because in terms of this documentary, the hair loss cure, it maybe it explains something. Maybe it explains why there is no cure. We got recommended a whole bunch of brands or a whole bunch of research companies or potential cures that could be coming out over the next few years by Matt Dominance. And I did my own research too, and I probably found 20 or 30 other companies after that. So I messaged relentlessly, using different tactics, calling them, etc. And different approaches to all the companies that Matt told us to message. 0 responses. Not even a thanks but no. We got your email, we'll think about it, whatever. I messaged all these other companies, 30 or so, not a single reply. There was, truth be told, there was one company I was talking to. They got bought out by somebody else, and they shut it down immediately. So what does this tell us? Does it tell us that nobody wants to respond to First Man? Nobody wants to respond to what we're doing here? Well, you know, just based on history, that's not the case. Because we've had Dr. Gad Sad reply to us. We've had a woman called Annie who was supposed to be on who was on Joe Rogan, who said, look, this isn't really for me, it doesn't suit my brand, but thanks for getting in touch. This is what people do. Thanks for getting in touch. I've had social media brands get back to me. We've had BKB, the bare knuckle. I'm just going through all these different industries. And all in all, I swear to God, I've probably had 96% reply rate from everybody that I've sent emails to, either saying yes, maybe, no, or can I get some more information, whatever it might be. But when it comes to this hair loss doc and looking into cures and potential research moving forward in the future, that's suspect. And I'll tell you why it's suspect. Because the pitch that I am giving these people is, you have a quote-unquote hair loss cure or a potential hair loss cure that will be coming soon. Who is it for? Probably men. What audience do I have? Men. What did I go? I went bald. Do I have an audience that are quite keen to talk about going bold and bold? Yeah, there's a large percentage that went through that issue themselves, which is why they related to me and subscribed to my channel. If I had a product that was either in the testing phase or was ready to come to market, either or, doesn't matter, or both, I would want access to an audience of bold men, men who are going bold, men who aren't even bold yet, but in the future probably will face a problem, and no other men. And look, it's free marketing. It's free marketing for your product. There is literally no reason why they wouldn't do this, in my opinion. Literally not a single reason. So the only conclusion that I can draw from this and guys, I promise you, I tried. This documentary should have been out a month ago. I have relentlessly emailed nonstop, and I've just become fed up with it. So we said, what can I do? What can we do differently? Like, there's nothing we can do. We can't get anybody to speak about this. I guess Matt Dominance has already spoken about it. So in that case, if we're talking about the research, it does take me back to the conspiracy aspect, where, number one, it could be getting shut down, and these people are like, it's much more likely. And look, I'm not accusing anybody or any of the companies that Matt actually recommended here. I'm just speaking as a blanket statement about the industry as a whole. I'd say that again, I am not speaking specifically about the companies that were mentioned by Matt. I am just speaking about the industry and hair loss as a whole. But it wouldn't shock me if they're getting extra funding for research. That wouldn't shock me. So what I'm trying to tell you is it all just flirting but no actual sex? It feels that way. It very much feels that way. Where it's like, we're doing the research, we're testing on people, we're doing this, there's a cure. This is what this whole documentary was about. That's why it's hair loss cure 20 ? Because it's always threatens next year, hair loss cure. 5 years, hair loss cure. But it never happens. It never materializes. And when I give these companies an opportunity to come forward in a documentary, show what they've done, and say, this is ready, this has come to market, we're moving forward with this is like, we're getting results here, not a single person wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about RNA particles or stem cells or anything else that's coming out of this industry right now. Hair cloning even individual organizations that it would massively benefit because they charge a couple thousand to do this. Like, nobody is speaking about it. Nobody wants to speak about it. It doesn't make sense. So I think my personal conclusion is it's a load of fluff. I think it's just the fucking same as it always has been when people are talking about hair loss cures. I think people know it won't result in a cure, and they're just feeding a narrative to get more money, to get more funding. That's the only conclusion I can draw from this. That's how it feels. Now, I could be wrong. There could be a cure in the future. I'll probably put this documentary out and 4 companies will get back and say, we'd love to do this. That's sod's law, right? But right now, with the state of the hair loss kind of cure, like, anybody who's ever searched it, and bearing in mind I lost my hair about 10 years ago, and have since had SMP, but 10 years ago, and I'd searched it non-stop, probably since I was like 18, knowing that I could maybe go bald because of my dad being bald. So for like 12 years, it's the same thing. Hair loss cure, promised in the future. 5 years away, 10 years away. And it's just like, I think we're just going to be strung along forever. That's the conclusion that I'm drawing here. And I think what we're looking at now with hair cloning, stem cells, RNA particles, look, somebody independent might actually come out with something in the future, who knows? But right now it feels just like all the shit that people were speaking about 10 years ago. Whatever that was back then, whatever the headlines were back then. Here's a breakthrough, here's a cure, here's a potential. It just seems like fluff for funding. And at the end of the day, if you were in this industry, you were, I don't know, the researcher, the scientist, whatever it might be, and you said we could potentially have a major breakthrough here, we've got something, and somebody offers you, 10 million to chase that down and see it through, and that gives you another 8 years of research and funding in a top-level lab, you'd fucking take it, wouldn't you?
In this documentary, I think we can draw the conclusion that a hair loss cure is not coming around the corner anytime soon. There are things that you can do such as SMP, hair transplants, wigs, etc. that we've explored in this documentary that might be an option for you. However, whatever you choose to do, make sure you do it for all the right reasons. Don't cover up something that you think's a problem in order to gain confidence. So whatever you choose to do, whether you get a transplant, whether you get SMP, whether you decide to stay bald, just remember it's not the hair or the hair loss that defines you, it's who you are as a person day to day.